The following podcast is sponsored by Basico. At Basico, we understand your needs and pain points. Our expertise in CFO services, legal, finance IT, and people and payroll helps drive your business forward by inspiring change and challenging norms. We believe in deep explorative discussions and critical angles, the same spirit that fuels the Only Constant podcast hosted by our own Lasse Rindom. Discover more about Basico's vision and services at basico.dk. And if you like what you hear in this episode, please don't hesitate to share it with a friend. And now Lasse, take it away.
You are listening to The Only Constant, a podcast where we go beyond the usual discussions in technology and business and aim to explore more than explain. Join me for engaging discussions with a diverse range of global thought leaders as we seek to uncover new perspectives and insights in a free-flowing conversation. My guest today is Frank Casale, and I am your host, Lasse Rindom. Hi Frank, and welcome to The Only Constant. I'm super happy to have you on the show today with me, live from New York as well. So, not live when this goes out, but you get the drift.
It's live now.
It's live right now. That's exactly true. And we just discussed that as well. I'm super excited to have you and your New York accent here. I read a lot of Paul Auster, like The Sopranos, all that. So I think it's, and also, what is his name? What is the Bond villain? What's his name? The New Yorker. What's his name?
I don't know. I think as far as Bond's concerned, all New Yorkers are villains. I think that's his perspective.
Okay, let's leave it there.
No name necessary.
No name necessary. Christopher Walken, that's the name. That's the name I was looking for.
Awesome.
That's it.
He's from New York City. He's from Queens, New York.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Okay, so Frank, you're a conflicted futurist. Mm-hmm. Why are you conflicted?
Well, I took it upon myself to add that to my LinkedIn profile a little bit as a joke a few years ago, but it seems to catch more attention than anything else in my profile. So I would say this, now more than ever, the future is just such an interesting place. I'm fairly focused on it, somewhat obsessed, some would say, those around me would say. However, I also, in the past couple of years, embraced mindfulness, especially since knowing how the future is just hurling at us so quickly, just so rapidly. And but my challenge is you can't be obsessed with the future and also be obsessed with the present. So it's a bit of a balancing act for me. That's really my challenge, and I recommend I recommend everyone out there you don't have to be obsessed, but be focused on the future, but really embrace and appreciate the present, like I am right now here with you for this discussion.
But that's also, the challenge that most enterprises are actually facing right now as well, right? Isn't it, companies in general, that we have to focus on what we're doing today and how we're delivering the services and the values that we're delivering today, while at the same time be focused on the future, right? So being in the present while looking to the future, isn't that the core challenge?
I think that's somewhere between a fantasy and a myth. I think all public corporations focus on the present. Mostly to their demise. There's always exceptions, but it's quarter to quarter, which has always hurt them and will really hurt them as things really begin to change. If they were focused on the future, even the near future, they would be making some dramatic, aggressive moves today, but most of them are not.
But that's also the weird thing, isn't it? That most of these companies are, the valuation and the market moves with belief in the future, right? The more they believe in the future, then the stock price will go up, right? But at the same time, it's quarter to quarter. So how do they overcome that? What is the conundrum here?
I think they really focus on the quarter to quarter. I don't think they do too much about the future. I'm not here to criticize. I just think it's the way the system is is geared is and the way they're paid and the way they're motivated is really to focus on the present. And the way they keep the analyst happy is just more often than not to use words like the word this year you'll see in most plans and annual reports and analyst briefings is they'll just have the word agentic. I think every third slide has to have the word agentic, and they get through and get a good grade. Are they doing agentic? No, they're not. They're barely doing. Most of them have barely embraced large language models. And again, it's not a criticism because there's a justified reason for that in many cases. But so I like to say, if you can't bench press 100 pounds, why are you talking about bench pressing 150 pounds? Start with the 100 pounds. So let's talk about large language models. Let's talk about low-hanging fruit. Let's get some new people in to get some outside-in thinking. But I don't want to get ahead of myself. So I don't think they're conflicted. I think for the most part, they're, with very few exceptions. There's always visionary leaders out there, maybe 1 in 50. But most of them are forced, if not just overwhelmed with the present.
Yeah. So okay. So they're complacent. Maybe that's the problem, or something like that. Something around that word, maybe. But I think you're saying something here that I think is interesting, because you just said they're living quarter to quarter, not thinking about the future necessarily. But then you're also criticizing that when they're putting agentic into their frameworks, right, or into the statements, which is looking at the future, isn't it? So when they're saying agentic, they're looking at the future, and then you're saying, "Oh, you're looking too far ahead now. Look closer to home," and then you criticize them for looking too close to home.
Well, no, and again, I sound like I'm criticizing. Maybe I am. It's more of an observation, and I don't think it's. My point is, future readiness is different than messaging. So. So there's an old Italian saying, I can't say because I can't speak Italian, but I knew it once. I heard it once many years ago, and it translated, it says, if you want to get to know me, don't look at my mouth, look at my hands. So it's not. It doesn't matter what I'm saying, it's what I'm doing. So they can say agentic all they want. They can say agentic all they want. But the question is, what are you doing? If you were there, if I were there, we might question. And again, not to needle them, it's more discomfort. It's more this most recent wave, is significant as it is. It's, as I see it, it's as much grassroots as anything else. So how long does it take? How long does it take for this to get from the worker to the middle management to up top, where people get comfortable with it? Otherwise, it's just going to be another blockbuster Netflix scenario all over again, just a lot more dramatic. And people realize that the entire business and the business model is changing. And, how much runway do you have between when you figured that out and then the time left to make the change before someone else is already there?
But you also need to, it needs to hurt to get somewhere, right? I always say that, if it's too easy, it didn't have any impact, right?
No, fair enough. No, fair enough. I'm a big believer in the change occurs when the pain of doing nothing exceeds the pain of doing something. Right? That's not my saying, but it's one I love. I learned that back from my outsourcing days, and then my early days in robotic process automation. In the beginning, most people are, I'm not sure, and then suddenly somebody has a company's either in trouble or an executive is in trouble, right? They missed a couple of quarters of something, and then they need some magic, they need some voodoo, and they're willing to take a shot because their job might be on the line. And again, not criticizing. I would do the same. At some point, you need some magic somewhere. If you tried all the usual, approaches, and you need something new, and then a consultant, shows up with an idea, and you say, okay, let's pilot this and give it a shot. And then occasionally, lo and behold, there's the magic you're looking for.
So is it more like a discomforted futurist instead of a conflicted futurist, maybe, or something? I'm getting on the
for me,
word.
I'm conflicted, which makes me it doesn't make me any better than it's just determining where to focus. But I'm not managing a public corporation. I think they have their hands full because at the end of the day, as I see this, a little differently than others, this is partially a technological revolution, but as I see it, it actually is a reinvention of how work gets done. It's digital labor, a term I supposedly coined about 15 years ago. I've never invested a minute to determine, and nor do I care. But at the end of the day, if you have 50, 100,000 people on payroll or more, and suddenly there's a labor alternative, is that good news or is that bad news? I would say for many of them, it's a little bit of both. Because now, what do you do?
Yeah. So how can it be bad news? Is that because now you need to work on it and change it and mess things up, or?
Yes, you have to mess things up. Yes. And again, it's not, would be if I was running, I wouldn't have all the answers. But you say, okay, let's start to envision the future, the after photo. Right, here's the before photo. Before photo, we have Blockbuster. The after photo, we have Netflix. And you say, wow, that's a lot of pain. That's a lot of pushback. That's a lot of disruption in the company. That's a lot of disruption for our customers and a lot of in-room fighting at our board meetings. So, they like to say the way it supposedly goes, the difference between evolution and revolution is somebody gets shot.
So the funny thing here is, that it sometimes it sounds so easy when you go on LinkedIn, right, or anywhere else. It sounds like it's so easy. AI is just coming, it's going to happen, it's brilliant, it's just upside, right? And I also wanted to have a question saying, it's coming for everything, but what shouldn't we be using it for? But maybe actually it's also so discomforting for companies that they're more focused on, let's not use it for everything, let's not try out everything, let's try only for what actually makes sense to do, right? Where do you see companies actually moving with this? Are they trying to apply it everywhere, or are they more trying to be cautious about it and restrained?
Oh, I see. Yeah, I see the majority of the use by far, 80, 90% of it, as I see it, is solopreneurs and very small companies, only because they have the freedom. Larger companies, there's greater risks, there's concern. And I interviewed, I guess I could share it because it's public. I interviewed Bob Rapp, is one of the leaders of AI and at GM, General Motors, and he was talking about in some cases very, very exciting. And in other cases, you could look at if you're fearful of AI and you're fearful of hallucinations and you're worried about privacy, and want to be kept awake at night, you could look at this as I think the expression he uses is kind of a virus with a credit card. That's pretty scary, right? You wouldn't how many tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands would you want of them running through your company or your client base? But but then there's also scenarios where it could totally reinvent a company, and your growth trajectory is significant. You have a much more agile company, and the people that are there are getting more gratification. They're doing less grunt work. It's a totally reimagined organization. The average person in the average company does not like their job, and 80% of the work they're doing is just, stuff that they weren't hired to do. It's below their pay grade and not what they went to school for.
But it is this, what you said, I've thought about that a lot, often, right? That, having these more, unstructured bots that can interpret things and move in different directions all the time. And then with credit cards, it's just, I've said, who wants a reasoning model with a full API access to your SAP or whatever, right? No one wants that. That's not how it works, right? It takes time to make things purposeful. And that's also why, one of the things I want to speak to you a little bit about is, are we integrating this? Is that the challenge that we're having around integrating this into the enterprise, or rewriting the enterprise, or just ditching the enterprise and going startup and see if they can become a new enterprise, right? I think there's something where everyone all startups wants to be an enterprise, right?
Yes, they do, but they have less restrictions
initially.
Certainly initially, yes. But if I think about what most organizations are doing, most organizations are intrigued. They're early stage. They're leveraging their advisors to make to determine what a strategy should be, to determine what a roadmap should be, to identify low-hanging fruit, I would argue, if you look at that, if you think that through, it's not dissimilar to early stage of any other technological wave. I would say the difference here, though, is, and I'm doing this a long time, 20 plus years. This will be, the impact will be 10x greater, and the speed of change will be 10x faster. So therein lies one of the challenges.
But isn't one of the problems that people, a lot of people are also saying they haven't seen it yet? There's a slight fatigue with all this AI everywhere, and people are still sitting doing the same things in most companies. Also, in the way I go about my life, I use ChatGPT a lot, or GPTs, and I use Claude, and I use Gemini occasionally as well. You have your go-tos, but I still think most of the world is sort of, except for SoMe's crap right now. Everything's crapped up by AI slop right everywhere. That's actually crazy. That's the biggest flood, just ruined them. But I think that there's something with, we have some, what do you call, value streams that we're all living in and working in. We're working in some kind of order, some kind of rhythms to things, right? And those rhythms have not been disrupted yet. It doesn't seem that simple. That's why also my question of integrating or rewriting or just ditching is a little bit subtle that way, because don't we need to integrate it into everything we're doing?
Right. No, fair enough. Listen, I think it depends on how aggressive one wants to be. I would say integration is key. Any and all discussions I'm in, hey, listen, I spend half of my time doing consulting and half of my time kind of hands-on leader, either co-founder or co-investor in a few early stage startups. So I'm there. I'm there day to day. On the consulting side, I'm in other people's conference rooms, helping them kind of get to the next step. And then in my own startups, I'm dealing day to day with opportunities and challenges. I would tell you, it's very rare that you're having a discussion. If you have some cool new tech and you're talking to Global 2000 company or Fortune 500, you don't get past the second meeting without discussions around scalability and integration. It's always there, always there. So that's fine. I see that as an early phase move, because what you're doing is you're plugging into the existing configuration, and that's okay. But I think over time, two things happen. The company, the leadership in that company, business leadership, not beyond technology leadership, the business leadership in that company becomes more and more aware of the art of the possible. And as they're becoming more aware, the technology is getting better by the day. I mean, literally every 24 hours. So lo and behold, 6 months later, there are some breakthroughs to say, wait a second, this is not an evolutionary move. It's a revolutionary move. So maybe it's less about integration. It's more about transformation. And which it is. Doesn't mean you do that overnight. Again, there's the right pace, and leaders know what that is for their company or their personal style or their preference, right? Too slow, maybe bad. Too fast, maybe you break it and you get fired. But I think once you realize it's a revolutionary play, then you need to really reinvent. Then you want to have some of those very kind of first principle discussions. Hey, what business are we really in? What is our core competency? So at that point, you realize this is not a technology play. It really isn't a technology play. It's really much more top down. So when people say to me, hey, what could we use it for? I say, well, you can use it for a lot of different things. Let's talk about if it could do whatever you want, and you get to pick one, better, faster, cheaper. Where do you want to start? Pick one, not all three, because I know where you want all three. And if they say
you can only get two, yeah,
right. Then if they say faster, then okay, fine. Let's go to this, magical genie in the bottle and see where we can make things faster. But even at that point, it's still not a technology discussion. It's a business discussion, and more often than not, it's a process discussion. So, by the way, I would say you have an opportunity. I would say next, if I could use a corny term, next gen BPO companies. I think business process outsourcing players or business process service players. There's a wave of new players, which should be out there soon. And some of the existing players that get it, make some moves and some investments, I think they will have more impact than anybody in the game, because they're going to look at it as a process. To me, it's nothing against the people in the game, but large language models, those big players, when we see them fighting and going back and forth, and colleagues of mine get nervous, I see them in the electricity business. As I do on electricity, I'm let them go. I'm not competing with them.
I do the same, Frank. I'm like, people are like, aren't you testing this new model? No, I'm not. I know what it does. I know the principle. I don't need to look at it. I need to look at the outcome it can produce. And I had people were like, hey, why are you not? You're the AI lead. Why are you not working on? Why are you not testing out this? Because it bores me to death. It's like sitting around playing with electricity, right? And like looking at my light bulb. Oh, a different light bulb. What's the?
No, right on. Well, a quick story is I was in a wonderful hotel recently in Manhattan, very top of the line hotel. We're there and just about to have a meeting in this beautiful lobby of this hotel. Just millions of dollars. You look around, you see art, you see design. It's wonderful. I was with a colleague of mine, and I say, "What do you think?" You look around. He's looking around and say, "Oh, this is amazing. This just the design, the whole vibe of the place." And I say, "What do you think of the plumbing?" And he looked at me like, I said, "Oh, you don't want to talk about large language models?" See, to me, that place, I'm sure, had great plumbing. But all of that, no disrespect, that's plumbing. Somebody built that hotel. They had a plan. They had a mission. They designed that lobby. They had an idea. They knew their customer. They knew the impact. The impact could have been contemporary modern. It could have been traditional old-fashioned. It could have been Zen. It could have been energetic, electric. The rest is plumbing, electricity.
But it's the same, if you go around, just saying we need to now buy AI to get some AI to do some AI with some AI. You put AI at the center of your frameworks. Everyone's doing that right now. I'm always saying, AI is the backdrop for your framework. It's never at the center. It's not about AI. It's about value, a point. Outcome value. That's what you need at the center, right? But I always say it's like buying a big flat screen, about a 70-inch big flat screen. Okay, so what should I use it for? What movies should I see? Oh, there's nothing on. Oh, nothing to watch. So what are you going to use your big flat screen for, right? It's I also. The weirdest thing in the world is I've had this conversation too often as a consultant coming out to a client, and they're like, so we just built a data warehouse. So what do we need to use our data for, Lasse? Can you help us find things to use our data for? I'm like, why did you build a data warehouse? You have no fucking clue what you're going to do.
Right.
Plumbing. But that happens all the time. I don't know. People are doing that all the time. We build a big data warehouse, and they look at me, give us your great ideas. I don't know what data you have.
Right.
Why did you build it?
Well, it is a very exciting place to be if you're a CIO or CTO right now. So some of us, occasionally myself, is I get into these echo chambers with the technologists, and they're having conversations similar to the ones you just mentioned. So to me, the sooner these conversations shift to business leadership, to head of the business, to strategy people, to head of sales, to head of human capital, then we realize that the technology is what it always is, which is a how. And as I like to say, what's your what? This is a how. Very nice that you have a data, whatever, right? It's very nice that you're switching from this large language model to the other. But, that's a how. What's the what? Is the what to 10x growth? Is the what to create a more agile company? Is the what to go global? Is the what to significantly increase user experience? Like, again, make like you have a magic wand. What do you want to do? You want to minimize a problem? You want to maximize a gain? I
used to say 2 years ago that we had a strategic deficit, right? They were being answered by engineers, right? But I think that today it's sort of like, the strategic deficit, we don't really have that. People know what they're doing. There's a value streams. Boardrooms are not sitting around going like, we don't know what to do. They know what to do. They don't know how to articulate AI into that discussion yet. And I think that bridging the technology into purpose is much more important than speaking technology. Right? And I think that's the same thing you're saying, right?
No, right on. In fact, the way I look at it is, for many companies and even individuals, you're in your life, or if you're a startup guy like me, more often than not, where you got stuck is with a how. Because you have an idea, and then you say, okay, here's how we get there. You say, oh my goodness, I need 15 people, 3 years, and I got to raise $10 million.
It's also so difficult because the how is alignment, right? It's also about aligning. Then you need to speak to other people. You need to, Frank, it's so boring, right?
No, but let me try this one on. But let's assume the how becomes easy. I think what you're going to see now is a a challenge for which leaders have vision. Because now we don't have not only the challenge, but we don't have the excuse. It's almost like, hey, Frank, we could do whatever you want. I'm there with my team, and in this imaginary meeting, they say, we could do whatever you want to do. What do you want to do? I'm like, let me get back to you. What? Wow. Let me think. Because now it really will be about vision, because suddenly time is less of an issue. Maybe it doesn't take 3 years. Maybe it takes 3 months. Money is less of an issue. It's no longer, IBM, Watson, and Memorial Sloan Kettering. I don't know what they spent there, but I know it was millions and years. And then somebody comes in, a small team, and they say, "Oh no, we could do this for $300,000 in 4 months." Wow. So the how is no longer the issue. It's just a matter of people sitting in rooms down and say, "What do we want to do? We could do anything we want," and that's where you're going to see people initially struggling, and then hopefully starting to feel the freedom of not only having a vision, but knowing how the economics, the time and money axes have shrunken so much that you could go for it, change your mind, go for it again, and change your mind. It's almost like this concept of rapid prototyping.
Yeah, but I get that. Right? I always say, it's like, because I completely agree with almost everything you just said. I agree with the vision is more important than ever. I agree with God made the whole world and he sent all the animals past Adam, and Adam had to give them all names, right? You still have to do that. You have to say, what's my vision with this animal? What do I want to use it for, right? Is it useful to me? God was like, I can create anything for you, Adam, or whatever you want, whatever you want. But Adam, you have to tell me what it is to you, right? And it's the same thing we always have to do, and it's maybe taking it on a high level, but it's the same job. That job is one of the oldest ones, pre-Eva or Eve, right? You had to Adam was giving names to things because that's what we do, right? We make things meaningful, and that's the same thing you're asking here. But I just think that meaning also in larger societal context always becomes constrained, in these interdependencies between people, right? That also means that we can't just keep on revamping. I know that's the dream also of Satya and all those. Maybe we won't have software tomorrow. We'll just have a flux of stuff, of everything all the time changing. Yeah, but then you don't have anything. You don't have any purpose. You don't have any value streams. You don't have society. You don't have civilization where it's about us working together on the same. Do you get where I'm getting at? There's something here that needs to be stable as well, right? And I think that is the balance. We're both saying, what do we want? And how can we make sure we all want the same thing? Or kind of the same thing.
Yeah, well, hence the revolution.
Yeah,
I'm not a historian, but I think I think we will start to see more and more successful use cases, and I think we'll start to see more and more success stories. And someone recently asked me how I see the future as far as utopian versus dystopian, and I continue to think a bit, because my response changes over the years. But as I feel today, I think it gets better, and then it gets worse, and then it gets better. I think it's
dialectics. Yeah, it's dialectic, right?
Yeah, I think people start using it and say, wow, wow, wow. But then it starts to be really, really, at some point, every company's using it. There's going to be issues. There's going to be concerns about jobs justified. There's going to be concerns about bad actors out there, what they're doing with AI. And then, so it goes from, wow, this stuff is awesome, and anybody could use it, and anybody could do things with it. And then people start doing things with it, some good, some bad. It starts to be reflective of the humanity in general. Right. Mm-hmm. So good people doing good things, bad people doing bad things. So then I think that there will be a period of call it dark ages, or call it the ice age, or whatever you want. But I think there's going to be that kind of a thing. And then eventually maybe it all comes together, and then there's this future enlightened, better place. We've figured out the role of this advanced technology. We've figured out what a reinvented enterprise or organization looks like. We've cracked the code on the economics of how does everybody make a living, and that's my That's my belief and my hope at this point of how it plays
but
out.
I just think it's revolutions are a thing, right? But I am actually, a historian. I don't know if you remember that, but I'm actually, and I think most revolutions are just, incremental, big leaps that then have a reaction, and then you go back again. So it's sort of still incremental, right? There's this whole, we attach ourselves to things. An example is, if someone came 200 years ago and pitched, I want to make a drink, it's going to be tasting like sugar, but we're having no sugar. It's going to be tasting like caffeine, but have no caffeine. And I'm going to call it Coca-Cola, but there will be no cocaine in it either, right? And that's you have that today. You have light decaf Coca-Cola, and that's not even a thing, right? But it's an incremental symbol that sort of evolved over time and became a stable mainstay for millions of people, right? And that's why it could evolve to something differently all the time. So I think this whole redoing, just rewriting, I don't really believe in that. I believe it has to attach itself to something we're doing, and then things change a little bit, right? And I think that's the difficulty, right? How do we attach it in a meaningful way to what we want to do, the purpose that we're already driving? So we could, at some point, make weird products like decaf Coke, right, or whatever. I think it's
fair enough. I think the key, though, what the vision I share with you, my vision, and it may be, and who knows how accurate or inaccurate it is. It also helps me to satisfy, my desires as to which should I be focused on. And I think the best we can do is just, again, one eye on the present, one eye on the future. And if, what would you do? What would you do maybe at the tail end of the Roman Empire if you say, hey, right now, it's wonderful. And then, but, maybe in, 10 years, there's going to be barbarians at the gate. So do you just hand wring for the next 10 years? Do you, it's not a rhetorical question. What do? Do you at least enjoy the good food and wine and company and the utopian lifestyle, right? What do you do at that point? Do you enjoy the present and prepare for the future? I think what we have, and that's what I think what we as individuals, if we have a sense of what's going on, and the people in our circles sort of have a sense, and everyone else is like, thinks this is a cool new iPhone app, right? But for me, it's again back to do what you can in the present, and but be prepared. Be prepared for things shaking up a bit.
We're really good at, quick responses to things changing right now. We're typically quite bad at things saying that this could happen in 10 years because, maybe that doesn't match with what we want to do right now, right, Frank? That's also the problem, right? That's exactly what we started. Then we're going back to what we started with, the quarter to quarter, right? The whole thing.
It is. But listen, also think it's for me, listen, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm an advisor. I'm also a father and I'm a husband. I'm a family man. So I have to think across multiple dimensions to think, right? So, so what do I do to maximize this phase? And which is, let's say, build, scale, help people be able to monetize something that helps companies and or people. And then when the winter comes, just be able to hunker down and get into that different phase, right? And not knowing how long is that winter, 6 months or 6 years, I don't know. But I think my recommendation, anyone who will listen, is that's the thinking you need to do. Don't be purely obsessed with today because it's a phase, and don't be purely obsessed and paranoid about tomorrow at the cost of today. Neither one of those scenarios to me makes sense.
No, you have to have you have to have 2 feet, one in each camp, right? Yeah.
Enjoy the summer, and know the winter's coming, and then right after that is spring. So here we go, right?
Yeah, there we go. But you also said, I think it's interesting what you said, that leadership becomes more aware as time changes, right? And that's what we call transformation, digital transformation as well. So digital transformation is more of a cultural change, right? That's what you meant by that. Does that also means that it's maybe generational, Frank? So we're looking for generations to leave the leadership positions and then new generations to come in who has been growing up with AI and thinking digital in a different way?
That's a good question. Well, I think it's a balancing act. I think the key skill set and the key attribute of any leader today, regardless of their age, is, I would say, to be an open thinker and to be one that has experience leading an organization through change. So if you're an open thinker, then you're not going to shut out AI or anything. And then once you get it, you get briefed by all your lieutenants, and you get a good sense, and you get your report from your favorite management consulting firm with their logo on top, and you go through that, and then you speak to a couple of your buddies at the golf club, and you say, okay, I have it. I would say from there, the unique skill set, and there's an art and science to managing change. Not unlike in any revolution. It's so in that sense, I would say younger people would know AI, but they would not have the experience of managing that change, morale, focus, loyalty, getting people to be comfortable that we're going to make it through. That's unique. So to me, if you've never done that before, you don't want to be working for the company that person is experimenting with you guys for the first time, has never done it before. If all they do is use blunt force, and there's an announcement by email and that goes out, that kind of thing, which there will be plenty of those, it's not going to play out well. And by the way, if you think of it, many companies don't reinvent themselves.
But there you also have slow, Frank, right? People have to have been in business for a while, right? To actually lead, because you need to have that contextual understanding of what it means when things happen over time. That's the stability of organization. And I think a lot of people are always like, why are we not data transforming as fast as we should? Because it's not about the technology. It's about, first and foremost, the stability of the value proposition the company is delivering and how we can maintain that over time so we can continue to be a company. People miss that all the time. And then you need to plant your seeds everywhere in that organization. And then wait a couple of months, a couple of years, a couple of decades. I hope not, right?
No, right
but
on.
You get my point.
No,
right?
Listen, if you think of someone like a Bezos, who from day one has been obsessed with user experience and simplicity. So picture going to a meeting with him and spending an hour attempting to talk about your data lake. I mean, and so if you're not going to connect the dots to Bezos in that room, if you're not going to connect the dots to user experience, then he will attempt to do it for you, and maybe just boot you out of the room and look at your PowerPoints, and he'll do it. And then he'll find someone that would connect the dots, And I remember seeing a video. It's probably 20 years old of Steve Jobs, who I'm both a fan of and a critic of. But as a visionary, just awesome. I think as a person, but he's in the meeting with a bunch of engineers, and then I remember like this very complex slide up on the screen of how they were going to get files from A to B, and there was all sorts of techno lingo, and they were very proud of the approach that they had taken, and with whatever APIs and file transfer, blah 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 blah. And he looks at me, and goes, no. He goes, I want them to be able to click on here. Drag it. I mean, it was awesome. He just said, they were proud of their engineering feat. He goes, no. I want them to click on here and then drag it over here or wherever they want it to go. And that's where I want the file to go. And he knew his customer. This is your point from before. Yeah. Everything has to link to simplicity and knowing your customer.
Exactly. But the next question is, would Steve Jobs still have known that today, right? That is the big question, right? Isn't it also, you have the Bezos as well. He's good at making the UI and all that click, but now you need to have an AI UI. Does Amazon have that? Are they first with that? Or is it still the way Bezos used to build it? This whole, you said, we need the change, the slow change of personnel at the top all the time, moving around, coming in with new ideas, having the mandate, right? That's what you need to do, no matter how visionary the leader, right?
Well, I would say my bet is people like Jeff Bezos that are customer obsessed and tech savvy, and leading organizations that are customer obsessed and tech forward, I would say, will always win. Because what they're going to do is they're not going to be in a room to say, They're not going to spend several years saying this AI is cool. How many data lakes do we need, and what can it do? They're going to have meetings from day one to say, how can this help user experience? How can this help user experience?
But my point is, Frank, this executive that is, you're in a room, there's an executive that's been there for 10, 14 years. He built the old RPA setup, and you're coming in saying, maybe we should change that around to being, I don't know, a workflow engine or something like that with some others and some AI, and maybe rearrange all of it. And he'll be like, nah, I built this is a good project. It's a good thing. I built this. I designed this. I actually have my, that he becomes an owner of things, a proud parent of something that should be but you get my point, right?
No, I get it. Well, listen, I agree with that, and I've had the unfortunate experience of being part of teams like that in my career, and I agree with you. That's bad. But you think about it from a leadership standpoint. I think the key is to be technology agnostic.
But also follow this 7-year rule, right? Move on when it's 7 years. You need to reinvent yourself, and the company needs to reinvent themselves without you. There's something there, isn't there?
Yes, but in the scenario you mentioned before, and I agree with it, is you can't let that happen. Those guys, and there's a lot of companies that
happens all the time.
A lot of companies are going to say, "Hey, we've always used this. Let's not rush in." And listen, maybe they're right, or maybe they're more guiding the speed of change. But there's going to be a lot of debates and this is where it gets to leading change. What we discussed moments ago, leading change to me is much more EQ than IQ, right? So you have to sit there with your head of ABCD all around the table, and you say we're going to do things differently, right? So who wants to fight you to your face? Who wants to fight you behind your back? Who's going to call their recruiter and leave? And that'll cause just that internal dissonance will cost you a year. Just as you're about to leap forward, you're actually going backwards because there's infighting, and there'll be sabotage internally. So again, viva la revolution, right? So what kind of boss are you, man? So it's, again, back to the analogy. It's those who get it and who get it and are focused on the mission. They stay on the continued remuneration plan. Those who don't get it either quit or are incented to quit, or they just get fired. And it happens. It's going to happen. They may not agree. Listen, if you look on my network, there's over 150,000 people on my network. A third of them, close to a third of them, think AI is bogus. And it's 2/3 are either loving it, liking it, or are intrigued and enthusiasts, right? But 1/3 thinks this is all hype. So could you picture now, if that's your CTO, good luck.
Yeah, true. Then it becomes something that they maybe do on the side because they've been told by the board to do something, right? Then you have a co-pilot or something like that. But Frank, I also wanted to speak a little bit to you about, you're also the founder and CEO of Tranquilla AI, right?
Yes.
And I want to just, tell me a little bit about that, because that's also, I think it's both intriguing, but also slightly controversial what you're doing.
No, thank you. My wife asked me a few months ago if at some point in my career, could I get involved with something that's not controversial? And This is true. I started, my first big play was in the early 90s. I predicted outsourcing would take off, and I launched the Outsourcing Institute thinking that there would be a need for a global ecosystem and helping people to learn and connect. And I like to say we were half smart and half lucky because that took off. But of course, people loved that and people hated that. And then here we are now with AI, right? So the good news is AI makes for much more interesting discussions at the family picnic. Nobody cared about outsourcing at the family.
Outsourcing too. No, too far short.
So
no, it's not funny.
I'm almost as popular being the AI guy as if I knew card tricks. I could just be very entertaining.
Frank, the funny thing is, right, that outsourcing, now we're just backsourcing to AI instead, or we're outsourcing to AI. The whole service as a software thing. I think that's so interesting and so underrated and not even talked about enough. How, what does that mean for responsibility? Will the software vendors now have the responsibility for the processes when you outsource to them? All that, I think there's so much going on there. Software vendors need to take more responsibility for processes, right? They need to take more responsibility for processes, not less. But everyone's like, no, we're just delivering tech right now. There's disconnect here in the market.
So when I launched the Institute for Robotic Process Automation AI about 15 years ago, the first white paper I created, there was a simple graph in there, but I created a lot of conversations and debates. I had this, I think it was like three boxes from left to right, and I talked about how I saw the evolution of how things were going to play out. And I said it started with onshore, and then it went to offshore, and then it went to no shore. No shore meaning really digital labor, right? So here we are. Like you say, it's the new labor alternative for those who embrace it. And by the way, that doesn't mean that you fire everybody. The majority of the conversations I'm having now are for people that don't have enough people.
Yeah, but Frank, my point is, you can't. I get the whole thing with that, right? But you can't do that if the software companies don't take responsibility for the process a little bit. If they just want to be a platform and say whatever you want to do, but the companies are like, now we're outsourcing it to the software, then you end up having, you have a disconnect. Don't you think so?
Oh, well, listen, that's a whole nother conversation, my friend. You are spot on. So here's where I believe it's going is services software. And the software companies will struggle with that because they know software is software, right? And then it's a licensing model. But I think at the end of the day, what companies want is they want service, they want results, they want SLAs, they want KPIs.
Exactly, one outcome, one responsibility.
Right, but this gets back to my point moments ago about at the end of the day, if you and I were to start a company today, I would start a next-gen kind of agentic fueled business process outsourcing, a business process services company, because then the mentality will be services. Our customers will be buying the contract will be services and SLAs. That's the move, and everything else is plumbing.
Everyone's like, you won't be replaced by the AI, but you're replaced by someone using it. That's what people are saying. I'm saying always all the time, you won't be replaced by AI, but you will be replaced by someone doing the same for less or more for the same. End of story.
I agree. But back to you. So you gave me a chance to talk about Tranquilla, and
let's do that.
Let me. I ruined that. So here's a scoop. The background is there's two aspects of this exciting wave that I view is a little different than colleagues of mine. Many of them see this as a lot of the discussions tend to center around how intelligent the AI is and is becoming. It's around intelligence. And I think the big news is AI is now empathic. I think the big deal is, I like to say AI always had a brain, now it has a heart. Now what? Wow. It has IQ and EQ? That's huge. So that was the wake-up call for me 3 or 4 years ago as I started to see that. So that's one where I differ from some, not that any smarter, I'm just saying I look at it through that lens. What do we do now with what I call a humanized AI? I'll come back to that in a moment. The other thing is the majority of discussions, debates out there are seeing this as a technology play, and I see it as an alternative labor play. Okay, so you stir that gently, and you end up with Tranquilla. Tranquilla is really leveraging an empathic AI to target use cases where is the following scenario. One is I'll say services required with an employee, a patient, or a customer, or a citizen that require both IQ and EQ, right? Knowledge of something, but also people skills, where the problem statement for the customer is there's a shortage of personnel. So, for example, one big use case, there'll be 1 billion people this year globally struggling with mental health issues. This is just one use case. It's not the only one. And no one will dispute the fact that regardless of the country, there is nowhere near enough hotlines or call centers or mental health professionals. The gap is sizable and is getting worse. So what do you need? What's needed is a force multiplier for that team, right? So think of digital staff augmentation. Think of that term. So now the complaints from the people calling in are, I'm waiting on hold, I'm getting passed around, I feel like a number, this is inhumane. That's the current scenario. right? People calling a hotline, and it could be PTSD, could be depression, could be loneliness, could be something dangerous, could be they're doing harm to themselves or they're thinking of doing it to others. Another factoid: in the past 10 years, over 1 million people hung up on the U.S. suicide hotline. They were left on hold so long.
So here you're adding an AI to help take care of some of that load, right? Instead, but
we're creating a digital comfort agent.
But
Okay.
But don't you think that will also end up being, something where, what if you just end up we'll just only have that and not the humans afterwards? Or
it's quite possible. You always think about where we start, but what I'm doing now is the problem we're solving now is closing that gap. Again, all right. Again, whether it's patients, whether it's employees, whether it's customers. So if you think of a customer scenario, it's not mental health specifically, but if customers are in need of something and they're really ticked off and they're really unhappy, which happens 1 million times a day, whether your flight is canceled or your package never arrived or you're very unhappy with your insurance claim. So people are calling, customers are calling, they're very unhappy. And what does that mean to the company? That means you have a risk of losing customers. There's very little loyalty out there in the marketplace. So this concept of increased customer sat, increased customer retention, increased spend per customer. So think of this concept of eliminating hold. You never have to wait on hold again, ever, because we're no longer relying on a one-to-many model, which is that of the 50-year-old call center, contact center concept.
The funny thing is, Frank, at once I see the absolute controversial stuff in this, right? And we should have dedicated a whole episode just to discuss the controversies around this, right? But I also see exactly the hole you're filling, because there's not enough people to answer these calls. There's not enough people to do this out there, so it makes sense. And also, when I'm thinking about it, now we've had a discussion before that everyone's talking intelligence, but the real thing is we don't have long-term memory for these bots yet. There are things with intelligence that are actually lacking and seem to be significantly lacking, maybe over a long time, because even though you have long-term memory, maybe they don't remember those things you wanted to remember anyway. But being in the here and now, the current chat we're having, it's always empathetic. It's right now, it's like a young person.
Well, I will tell you, let me give you the good news. Thank you. And then I'll follow your cues on where you want to go. But empathy, memory, and personalization, those are the three primary pillars of our offering. So yes, empathy. By the way, the data shows that about 17% of humans have empathy. 100% of our agents will have empathy. So in that case, we're superior to humans. If you've ever called someplace, that person there hates their job, they hate you, they hate their company, they hate their life. And here you are just trying to find out when your tennis sneakers are going to show up.
But I also get that. But then it's also creating an alternative reality, Frank, aren't we? Reality is not like that. If 70% of humans are not like that, then if you only speak to these AI bots and then you go meet the world will be a scary place for you. Do you get where I'm getting with that?
I don't know. Well, I don't know. Oh, listen, I don't know. That's a whole other discussion.
Yeah, it is. I know. And
remember the guy in the Matrix? Remember the guy in the Matrix where he said, "I know this steak isn't real, but it tastes delicious." So you want, but truly, at the end of the day, so someone said to me a couple of months ago to say, well, it's not empathy; it's kind of synthetic empathy. It's kind of fake empathy. And I say, well, my favorite hotel is the Ritz-Carlton. When I go in there, they greet me, they smile, they look at me, they look like they care. Do they care?
Yeah, I know, but if you don't tip them, they don't care.
No. So you tell me, aside from everyone's mom, who really, really, really cares? So at the end of the day, people want to be treated well, and I think if people could be treated well, and if we can minimize stress for people and get them what they need, the world is a better place. And I think what you'll see here is ultimately, now that AI has a brain and a heart, it gets much, much better there. It just becomes better. And then people are fine with it. Listen, have you ever listened to a song that makes you feel good?
Yeah, of course.
Well, then you just got faked out. That's fake. It's a song. And the person's not even playing. It might be Led Zeppelin. It might have been the Madison Square Garden concert in 1970. Whenever that was. Somebody's going to fact check me. But But my point is, it's worked. It always works. Poetry, art, music, and now an empathic AI. There, how dare I connect it to the impact of? I aligned the new AI with art.
Frank, I'm not going, and also because we're running out of time, I don't want to hold you up on everything that could go wrong societal with this, but I think you're right. I think there is a room for this. I think actually you identified something where it makes sense. But the thing that provokes me is you're taking it so literal, what we can do with this, and then doing it, and then because that scares people. It scares the shit out of them, right? To some extent,
I don't know.
Here's
what I would say. It's kind of like I don't know if this is a good analogy. If you have the cure for cancer, do you test it and then get it out there, or are people fearful that you should test it for another 5 or 6 years, knowing that it may cost 10 million lives? Or do you speed up the testing? This analogy may fall apart on me. I don't know. But my feeling is what I'm not comfortable doing is if I just go back to mental health, which is our primary, not our only use case. Our primary use case is mental health. The second category is concierge service, so customers. And the third is coach, meaning helping to reinvent education.
But there's a real gap here. There's a real hole here in the market. You need this. Yeah.
But let's forget about the guy with the sneakers. Not a big deal. But from a mental health standpoint, you have veterans, you have single moms, you have stressed out kids from social media, you have people in war-torn areas. My feeling is, not you, but if anybody wants to debate with me what the risks are, I would say fine, but then let's discuss relative risk of doing it versus not doing it.
Yeah.
And solving a problem, or sitting back and just joining a bunch of my philosophical friends and having a bunch of debates for the next 5 years, making us all feel smart, but not building anything and not helping people.
But yeah, you're right. But what then you go? Next question is, what if they feel even more strange because they're talking about what if all of that, right? But you're right. Of course, we have a big hole. People are not being served. If they're already thinking about suicide and you're not talking to them, what are you going to do, right? I also saw some time back the debunk bot. Do you know that one? The debunk bot. Have you checked that out? You should test that. Debunk bot. It's because someone made it's 1.5 years ago. They made a bot that successfully debunked people who had what do you call them, conspiracy theories. You could type in your conspiracy theory, start chatting with it. It was a research project, and it had like 30% or something like that success rate, changing people's minds who were deep into some conspiracy theory, because it just attached and it never got tired. It kept on listening, kept on arguing, but it did it always in a nice way, always in a respectful tone. And then people, okay, maybe you're right. It never got angry, right? Martians didn't build the pyramids. You know how angry you could get, or something.
No, I'm fine with that. But my feeling is, listen, you could maybe break the world into 3 categories. There's people who are going to build things to have a good impact, and we like to believe we're in that category. There's people who are going to build things to maybe harm people and steal their money and create a lot of fake news or whatever, or manipulate people. And then there's going to be the other 80% of the world that's just not going to do anything. They're consumers. They're just average people. They're looking to get through the day. My plan is we want to build things to help people. We're already there. We're no longer pre-product. We're no longer pre-customer, and we're out there doing it. I have this greater theory that the more people, this is simple. It's too simple, but more people that build things to have positive impact. If more people do that than people that build things that are going to be dangerous, then we have a shot at bending that curve a bit. But you know what I'm saying?
You know what, Frank? You know what makes you so you're sympathetic here, because what you're saying is, you're arguing for this, and you're doing it, and I think it's great. You're taking a chance as well, but you're also saying it's simple. It's too simple. You said it multiple times. Something like that. I believe in this analogy, or maybe I don't believe in. You go back and forth, right? That's because, back to the first question, you're a conflicted futurist, but you're still betting on the future. That's what you said, right?
Yeah, I see the future differently. I've learned to. I'm constantly speaking to people a lot smarter than I am, and I learn from them. And I really thought of the future of something that was happening, like I'm watching a movie and I wonder where it's going. And I realize that I could, and my team could, in our own itty bitty little way, have an impact on the future. We could have an impact on it. So on one hand, even if we only have an impact on 1% of the future, that is impact. So people start thinking, embracing their agency over this, right? Less hand wringing and things like that, and say, go build something and solve a problem. There's people struggling. There's people stressed. There's companies that are about to go under. Maybe you could save them. And of course, there's that damn guy waiting for his tennis sneakers. Come on, let's think of the world being a better place if that guy gets his tennis sneakers shipped properly.
Frank, I think at some point in the future we should circle back over this and see what actually happened and what happens and all that. I think it's interesting. I think it's super interesting, and I know a lot of people also will be listening here and be like, "Whoa," because a lot of people also listening from different perspectives, also ethical perspectives, and all be like, "Whoa, what's going on here?" And I think just connect with Frank or listen to see what he's doing with Tranquilla and figure out your opinions there. I think Frank will be open to discussing with people as well on this, right?
You might compare notes.
Yeah, exactly. So. But now I think I promise you I wouldn't take more than an hour, and now we're already on the hour mark, Frank. So I think I need to go to my final question because I want to ask you that as well. So are you ready for that one?
I think. Let's see how I do. Am I graded? Do I get scored?
Only in my mind. I keep it to myself.
Ouch. Okay. The pressure's on.
Pressure's definitely on. Actually, my son also scores them. He produces these for me because he's like electronic music. He produces all the episodes. So he's always sending me, his message saying, this was a bad constant. This is a great constant. I loved him. I didn't like her. I didn't like him. It's actually very funny. So I'm educating him as well while we're doing this. Frank, final question. So, Frank, what is the only constant?
As I see it, the only constant from this point forward is chaos. It's either managed chaos, extreme chaos, or something in between. There's no scenario I see without it. And people's initial reaction would likely be that this is all bad. But I like to say that not necessarily. There's going to be such rapid, consistent waves of change that everyone will need to realize that they need to embrace the chaos. And it's no longer going to be purely a bad word. Embrace it, manage it, anticipate it. For those who struggle to deal with chaos, it's going to be a problem life for them. And I mean that in a respectful way. But from this point forward, it's chaos.
Thank you, Frank. That's definitely conflicted, and it's a new one. I didn't hear chaos before, just like that. I heard variations of it, but chaos is very. It's also very. It has a certain negative ring to it, right? Doesn't it? Is that purpose?
Sure. Well, listen. I hope that that's truly what I believe. Several years ago, I found out that there's good cholesterol and bad cholesterol. So I think chaos will become the new cholesterol. It's not all bad. You just have to understand it. It's going to be needed. It's a necessary part of the transformation process, whether it's your life, your business, your country, society as a whole. And just anticipate it, be aware, and do what you can to deal with it and come out the other side.
Yeah. That's a great answer to Frank. And thank you so much for being on The Only Constant, and thank you for that reply.
Thank you, my friend. I'm flattered. Thank you for taking all this time, and happy to support you in any way.
Thank you. Thank you for listening. If you liked this episode, share it with a friend or a colleague.